speak now to Rafe Heydel-Mankoo because I've got various things I want to talk to him about as a genius when it comes to matters history and culture. On that topic, Rafe, I know you weren't prepped for this, weren't primed for this because this is just me freewheeling right now, but it is an interesting one, isn't it? How the Christian church and how the 21st century, which is built upon a Christian system, whether you believe or whether you don't, frankly, our democracy, our morality, and all the rest of it sort of finds its roots in Christianity. And Christianity doesn't really have anything to say about Islam, and it can't. And it's kind of, this is difficult, isn't it? This is, I think, part of why we have such issues.
You're absolutely right. Well, the Bible doesn't have anything to say about Christianity, but of course we do know that Christian knights were engaged in a battle against Islam, you know, from the Battle of Vienna of 1683, the Battle of Lepanto in the 16th century. You have the Knights of Malta and the Knights Hospitaller and the Knights Templar. So there is an age-old clash of civilizations between the Christian West and between the forces of Islam. And it is that clash of civilizations, which is, you know, well over 1,000 years old, which we still see today. So even though we think we live in the modern age, we're still seeing these ancient enmities in one form or another being played out in the 21st century. The other point to make, of course, is that we're not doing much to defend Christianity in this country.
Absolutely not.
And of course, and you're right, the Christian Bible does say, you know, one must always be hospitable, invite people into your home, but one also must be a good guest. This is also fundamental. And unfortunately, we have people coming into this country who seek not to live in our society, but seek to replicate their homelands here, including bringing over the problems from their countries quite often into our country too. So we must understand that. I mean, I personally have the position I take is quite simply, we need to get rid of the 1951 United Nations Convention on Refugees, because that was created in a post-war period when nobody foresaw the great massive movement of peoples between continents. It was all about finding a home for the Jews in Europe, and also for those who couldn't go back to the Eastern Bloc countries behind the Iron Curtain, the Poles and Czechs and so forth. I think a new convention for the UN should simply say refugees will be housed within their continent of origin.
Yeah,
so if you're fleeing
exactly.
Sudan, you go elsewhere in Africa. If you're fleeing Ukraine, you can come within Europe. That way, because it's all about cultural compatibility, religious compatibility.
Exactly. When we had, you know, people trying to get out of Afghanistan when the Taliban took over, when we had all the people trying to flee Syria under ISIS, you had countries like Saudi Arabia who have got a lot of money, right? And also they're very able to pop up a massive, you know, tent village every time people want to come and do their sort of Mecca stuff. And they just turned the other way. They weren't interested. They didn't want to help. And I think you're right. You know, assimilation is so important. And if people want to come here because they want to work here and contribute here, and that is their end goal, then we as a nation have always said, look, that's great. Come and join us, because Britain is all about that kind of stuff. But sadly, people are not. And on the topic in general about social cohesion and talking about Christianity, I think we've made a big mistake in this country not putting a protective arm around it. When we had the Gay Marriage Act, for example, anybody who said, I'm not sure David Cameron should be telling the church what to do and telling them the Bible is wrong is a good idea, was a homophobe and a monster and you can't do that. And I'm like, well, he didn't say the same to Islam, and he didn't say the same to Hinduism or Judaism or Sikhism or whatever. He just said to Christian, and that's also kind of the fault of Henry VIII, let's be fair. But no protection has been given, really, as far as I can tell, to Christianity. And as a result of this, in part, there's been this science and other stuff has sort of like made it unpopular, but there's been this destructive, corrosive erasure, essentially, of our cultural glue. And it seems to me when you remove God from the picture, you better have a good idea of what you're going to replace him with. Because if you don't, you'll end up replacing him with trans lives matter, with the world is on fire and we've all got to bow down at the altar of climate change, and all these other neo-religions.
Yes, well, nature detests a vacuum, a void, as we all know, and something will always fill that void. You know, you could say that the new religion of the 21st century is the religion of woke. and racism and slavery are the original sin of this new religion of woke, of being born into a state of being racist. But, the problem here with this argument is that this only applies really to the Church of England, because the Roman Catholic Church, the Baptist Church, the evangelical churches in this country are filled to the brim. They know what they believe. They have very strict dogma and doctrine, as we also see in the mosques. They still stand for something, these religions. That's why people cleave to them, because in this era where people do feel very lost, they provide them with some stability. They're a grounding rock. The Church of England, however, would have gone down this path, I would say, even with or without a protective arm from David Cameron and others, because it is actually the Church of England is trying to be all things to all people. And that is one of the key reasons that we see it hemorrhaging so much support. The Church of England used to be called the Conservative Party at prayer. I'm afraid now it's very much the Green Party at prayer.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's strange, isn't it? A lot of countries, and so the Church of England sort of spread internationally as Anglicanism, and a lot of countries in Africa are like, not sure we want to be part of this anymore. You've gone weird. Talking about erasure, the corrosive erasure of cultural glue, it brings me on quite nicely to the next story, which is apparently there's a little village in Norfolk called Claxton, and they wanted to stick up a flagpole and put the Union flag on the top and celebrate being Britain, and lots of countries do this, and I think it looks really nice. But apparently locals are opposing it, warning that the connotations of the national flag could put people off moving there. I mean, this is just utterly sad. It's sad. I mean, look, these people are just clearly weirdos who spend too much time, at dinner parties trying to be popular and vote Lib Dem, no doubt. But it's sad that successive governments have allowed us to get to this stage where people actually think the flag of their nation is an embarrassment, or worse than that, it's some kind of dog whistle for nasty people, that it actually makes people who've come to this country feel like they're being ostracised and pushed out, when actually what we need is people to look at that flag and think, this is home, this is what represents me, this is what I'm going to cheer for in the Olympics. And I don't just mean Brits, I mean anybody who's turned up yesterday on a boat should look at that flag and think about it positively.
Yeah, this is such a depressing story, because what we've seen really over the last 20 years is the complete demoralization of this nation, a derision and a denigrating of all that we once held dear. And what used to be, when I was young, love of nation has become national self-loathing. Because, there's nothing more English than the cross of St. George flying above a country church, or in this case, a Union flag flying at a village hall. It's just as English as, drinking warm beer. And so, I can't really believe that there's a huge split in this village, I have to say. Instead, I think, as usual, as we always see from BLM to Just Stop Oil, I think there's probably a very loud vocal minority who are saying of this. But let's be clear here, because flags are very important. The Union flag is one of the world's most loved flags, and it should instill, quite rightly, pride in all of us, because it symbolizes this great nation, our proud history, which we really should be proud of. It still adorns, well over 20 flags of other nations, from Australia to Tuvalu. And it was the Union flag, people must remember, that was waved by Hong Kong protesters in 2019, protesting for democracy, because they saw it as a symbol of freedom and democracy. During the Second World War, from 1940 to 41, the Union flag was the only symbol of hope for the oppressed peoples of Europe living under the Nazi jackboot. And in fact, in both of the world wars, millions of black, brown and white troops fought and died under that flag, and it's an insult to their memory, those who gave their today for our tomorrow, to say that this flag is somehow representative of racism or anti-immigration. It was under the British flag that the Royal Navy sailed in the 19th century to abolish the slave trade on the Atlantic, but also abolish abhorrent practices in Africa and in Asia. So this is a flag of pride. It's not a flag of shame. And what gets me, where you really can see that the insidious nature of the left here, is that this is not about flying the flag year round. It's about flying the Union flag, the Cross of St. George and the county flag of Norfolk on appropriate days.
Who doesn't like a good flag? They're jolly. I've just made a little list while you've been talking, Rafe, because we're talking about the national glue and where's it gone. I'll tell you where it's gone. It's gone to the naughty school of being corrected because everything's racist. The Church of England realised a long time ago it was probably white supremacist and racist, and so started making sure that they self-flagellated in that department. But there we go. Our national flag is racist. Our language, the thing that binds us together, well, you can't say anything anymore because it's probably racist. Oh, our royal family. I forgot, yeah. Racist. Our history. Yeah, the British Empire. I remember what that is. Racist. Having, I don't know, closed borders and protecting your sovereignty. What is that? That is racist. So therefore, all of these things that made us a cohesive society are apparently racist. So being cohesive is racist. So actually, let's all just, I don't know, lob bricks at each other, judge people by the colour of their skin because that isn't racist. Please make it make sense.